The Cardinals' busy offseason continues as they have made another acquisition in order to bolster our bullpen. And we're also looking into an interesting article that highlights some Cardinals prospects as other MLB execs are staring in on them. We got some hype growing this Cardinals offseason, and we'll keep covering it here on the St. Louis Cardinals Daily Podcast. My name is Andrew Toysher, and let's dive right into talking about this new acquisition we have. His name is Justin Brule, and this requires explanation due to the spelling and the fact that this guy isn't necessarily a big move that everyone knows the name of. It's pronounced Brule, like gruel, except for with the B. I saw that in an article. That is how it is indeed pronounced. And Brule seems like an interesting piece for the Cardinals. He's a left-handed pitching, which we need, relief pitcher. Something that Chaim Bloom mentioned almost precisely that we need for our bullpen. We acquire him only for cash considerations from the Cleveland Guardians, and this was coming out of a bit of a wonky move both by the Cardinals and the Guardians for a couple of reasons. Folks may have heard the hype of a prospect of the Guardians, one John Kenzie Noel, a power-hitting prospect for them who is an enormous human being. And it got a lot of love on social media just for being so insanely large and having a cool last name. And I think he has a good story behind him as well. The Cleveland Guardians moved on for him, traded, or he ended up being a designation, a DFA for the Brule trade. They actually traded for Brule from the Blue Jays in December. So he was a Blue Jay during the season. In December, gets traded to the Guardians. The Guardians then end up cutting this John Kenzie Noel guy, who is probably the most well-known player somehow connected to Justin Brule, at least a name that I knew more than I knew Justin Brule before this move ends up happening. And the Cardinals, accordingly, will end up cutting Zach Kent, who we acquired, signed off waivers from the Cleveland Guardians. So we're just constantly swapping players from the Guardians. We've done this with Cleveland a lot. A lot of players going back and forth between the two groups. A lot of connections there in the front office. But the 28-year-old left-handed pitcher is a career-long relief pitcher. He's made 2 big league starts, which he made in the beginning of his career. And he's played for the Dodgers, the Rockies, the Pirates, and the Blue Jays. He even had a brief stint on the Reds. And fun fact, his dad's a professional bowler. So if nothing else, that's good vibes for the team. Big bowling fan. Maybe he gets a discount. It is all the way out in California. Maybe worth the travel out there for the boys to go have a nice party out there. So great job for that alone, if nothing else. But let's look into Brule and what he really brings to the team outside of his sick bowling connection. I'm just saying look out for it. It's not been phenomenal. There's a reason that we're acquiring him for cash considerations, but there's also a reason he wasn't just outright released. And they released a guy like John Kenzie for him. His career stats are 4.72 ERA, and he's pitched 89.2 innings on his career. His high in one season is 28 innings, finding himself up and down from the minors quite frequently. And he has a career 69 strikeouts in those 89.2 innings. I should mention and give credit to, I pulled a lot of this information from a wonderful article written by Thomas Gavain on Redbird Rants. If you guys are learning how to read, that's my resolution this year, is to learn how to read. Redbird Rants, a great place to get articles for your reading there. But we'll go over some of the information he laid out there because he did a great job. Last year, our friend Brule made 15 appearances, went 13.2 innings pitched, where he struck out 18 guys. We love seeing that out of a relief pitcher. More strikeouts than innings pitched. Yes, please. What we do not enjoy seeing, however, is a 5.27 ERA while doing so. The big reason is the dude has a walk problem. Command has been an issue for him, especially lately in his career. His whip was lower earlier in his career, and I think that's something that's worth noting here because his pitch mix has changed quite a bit. He is a sinker sweeper guy primarily, throwing those about each 40%, 45%, and then he mixes in this cutter just ever so often. And there's a reason he doesn't throw that cutter much anymore, because he only throws 90.2 miles per hour, 5th percentile fastball velocity, so the sinker makes a little bit more sense for him, wanting to operate down in the zone with that low velocity. Where he was excellent and has such great potential is that his FIP, despite the 5.27 ERA, his fielding independent pitching, which is what FIP is 4.16. So that gives you some hope. That's not a great season, but that is a usable season from a relief pitcher. But as I may point out here, I think there's more hope for getting even more production out of him. He was elite last year in average exit velocity and hard hit percentage. So guys were getting to his stuff, but his expected damage off of those pitches was way beyond what he actually received. His expected slugging was way below the actual slugging that happened. And of course, the walks are another issue in and of themselves. If he can rein that in, that's more reason for hope alone in itself. His expected ERA last year was 3.69. You'll take that. That would be a much better season, very tolerable, will become probably, unfortunately, one of our better relief pitchers if he actually had that realized ERA. And the primary thing he's going to serve for us is getting lefties out. Lefty on lefty matchups. His career slash versus lefties is 224 with a 282 on base and a 298 slug for a 580 OPS versus lefties. If we get only that from him, that will be probably worth adding him because we don't have many lefties on the team. I want to go back to that pitch mix real quick. So early on in his career, he threw the cutter a ton. That was his primary pitch by far. And after making a transition going up and down in the minors from the Rockies and the Dodgers, in 2024, he found himself on the Pirates, where he only played 7 major league games. And my assumption why it was not due to injury is because he found himself in the minors finding a new pitch mix that the Pirates equipped him with. And that's what he's kept more of so going forward, where he throws mostly that sinker and sweeper because they have been his best pitches. He got 11 of his 18 strikeouts with that sinker last year. It still got hit around a decent amount. The numbers show that based on his ERA. But that was one of his better strikeout pitches. His sweeper has been consistently useful throughout his career. They've encouraged him to throw that more, and they just said, stop throwing that cutter. You know, it's there. Keep guys honest with it maybe, but just stop throwing that cutter. And that adjustment led to this change in the hard hit percentage going way, way down. And if we're talking about him having walk issues, yeah, the guy is transitioning to throwing different pitches way more often. He's throwing a sweeper which moves quite a bit at a near 40% clip. So yeah, the guy might have some issues walking. The hope is that gets better. I'm not going to come out here and say there's no reason for concern. There is reason for concern. And why this might be a bigger thing for the Cardinals is how this affects the rest of the team. The Cardinals now have another left-handed pitcher in their bullpen, which maybe could signal, as Thomas points out in his article on Red Bird Rants, this might signal that JoJo Romero could be more movable after this. We needed left-handed pitching regardless. I'm inclined to say isn't that connected to JoJo. Sure, it makes it easier because you have another guy, but the only other lefty besides Romero and now Brule was Nick Raquet, who was not expected to make the big league roster on opening day. So I actually don't think this means we're more likely for a JoJo Romero trade. I think the likelihood has stayed the same. It may or may not happen before the trade deadline. I would expect a JoJo Romero trade by the trade deadline, unless the Cardinals are magically way better than they're supposed to be, which I cannot imagine. So he's also one of our more experienced pitcher now is Mr. Justin Brule, which is slightly concerning with 89 career innings pitched. I briefly want to try and get around to an article that dropped for the MLB.com. It was written by Jonathan Mayo on MLB.com. It was a poll that polled 40 MLB execs and asked them some questions, some very generic, broad things. For instance, the main question was, who do you see winning Rookie of the Year next year? Spoiler, it's the number 1 overall prospect, unfortunately, on the Pittsburgh Pirates, Connor Griffin, who's expected to do that. But some other Cardinals prospects, our big-time guys, got mentioned in this article, and I thought it was worth bringing up. So in a little bit here in our next few podcasts, I hope to bring up some prospects here going forward, so I thought this was a good way to introduce that. So they got asked by Mr. Jonathan Mayo of MLB.com, these MLB execs, who is the most underrated prospect in all of baseball? And one guy who got mentioned, he did not win by any means. He got a minor mention, and this was Rainiel Rodriguez our young stud catcher who I should talk a lot more going forward in our prospect insights here in a couple of episodes. He is an incredible slugger at the catching position. Through about 80 games last year, he slugged 20 bombs and had a 954 OPS. You will love to see that out of a 19-year-old. He soared up in our prospect rankings and is now an exciting piece that we have to keep all eyes on next year. This is Jordan Walker level excitement. I know Jordan Walker hasn't panned out, but the same level of excitement we got for that young guy is what Rodriguez might get this year. So incredibly underrated. More prospects or more MLB execs are going to know about this guy next year. Another guy who got mentioned is J.J. Weatherholt. I think we all expected me to mention him here if we're talking about MLB execs guys getting mentioned. He was mentioned not as the winner of this award of who will be the breakout prospect next year, but he did get mentioned in it. I think it's hard to call him a breakout prospect. Mayo mentions in the article, we got a bunch of different names for this because it's hard to nail down what do you mean by breakout? In the big leagues, in the minors? Well, it really could be in the big leagues for J.J. Weatherholt. He could be a guy who breaks out and becomes a household name in baseball next year if he ends up doing what he did in the minor leagues, which was having a phenomenal season, slashing 345, which we would love to see in the bigs. We'll have to see an adjustment first, of course. But J.J. Weatherholt, very exciting. Love to see more of that. The most interesting of the awards that got handed out was one for Best Future Closer, which was odd that he asked, I think, in the first place, but has had some interesting history in the name that got brought up there and won this award. Most of the name most mentioned by MLB execs for Best Future Closer, Liam Doyle. At first, I'm upset at this. How dare you mention that our highly drafted, highly considered prospect will be a closer and not a dominant pitcher? But they had some interesting points. The MLB execs brought up that his combination of unorthodox delivery and effort has some scouts concerned. You watch him pitch in any video, dude is going max effort from the left side. It looks really cool. I'm not going to lie to you. It kind of looks like a closer delivery. Go look at a video. You guys tell me what you think of Liam Doyle as a closer. Interesting to note, the guy who won that award the last 2 years in a row, Jacob Misiorowski of the Milwaukee Brewers. And that's panned out pretty well for the Brewers so far. So maybe that's what Doyle is. I think this award basically means you throw hard and have a funky release. Basically why Miz got it. Maybe that's why Doyle got it. You guys tell me in the comments what you think of those prospect awards and what you think specifically of Liam Doyle being a closer. I don't know. And what you think of Justin Brule coming to the Cardinals. I'm excited for it. We'll keep covering your Redbirds every single day here on the St. Louis Cardinals Daily Podcast. Again, I am Andrew Teuscher. Thank you guys for creating this community around this show. Please be interactive in the comments. I always check those for you guys. Thank you so much for listening.